If it's gone, then Isha time has started. Inshallah, we'll try to do this, inshallah, this week. And I think we'll be able to advance the Isha, maybe even before, maybe around 10 or maybe 10:10, something like this. We'll see. Assalamu alaikum. So inshallah, we'll start the class. Yesterday's hadith. We'll just do another quick commentary on yesterday's hadith, which reads as follows. Yeah, the microphone's working. ما من الأنبياء من نبي إلا قد أعطي من الآيات ما مثله آمن عليه البشر وإنما كان الذي أوتيته وحيا أوحى الله إليه في بعض الروايات أوحاه الله إليه فأرجو أن أكون أكثرهم تابعا يوم القيامة. The meaning is that the Messenger ﷺ says that there was not a prophet before me except that Allah gave him signs that would facilitate or cause the people to believe, while my greatest sign is a revelation that was given to me or inspired to me, and I wish that I would have the greatest following on a day of judgment. This shows also that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always sends evidence with his prophets. Just like Allah said in the Quran, لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُولَنَا بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ, I have sent my messengers with evidence. Always. And this is the difference between the real prophet and the imposters. There's so many imposters that come and claim to be prophets, and this continues till the day of judgment. But the difference between a real prophet and one of the differences, of course, is that the real prophet brings evidence that a sign that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can produce. And this indicates that he has a stamp from Allah that he is authorized to speak and deliver the information and the message of Allah the Most High. That's one thing. The other thing is that this hadith indicates that all the previous prophets, their signs or evidence was something separate from the revelation. It was something that was only demonstrated during the life of that prophet. It's separate from the revelation. But Allah, because this is the last message, Allah combined the revelation, the message, and the evidence in one book, which is the Quran. This way, the evidence or the sign that Allah gave or the proof is everlasting. You can believe in Islam and you can believe in the Messenger ﷺ even without seeing the Messenger, even without having seen the Messenger, because the evidence is everlasting and is preserved. That's another very important point. That's why it is the most beneficial sign ever given to any prophet. It's the most fruitful. It led to the greatest following, and it's everlasting. And another difference is that the message, the signs given or the miracles given to previous prophets are visible. They're examined by the eye, while بالبصر, but the evidence and miracle given to Messenger Muhammad ﷺ, the greatest one, of course, is the Quran, which is examined by the mind, the basira, the insight. It's not the actual sight, but the insight. And that's even stronger because eyesight can sometimes be subject to illusion, and the miracle can sometimes some people may confuse it with witchcraft or sorcery, because it also they can see some changes happening until they actually examine it. And of course Allah knows that people's mindset changes with time. People of this time and this era are more dependent on knowledge and science and logic, more than previous generations or previous ages. Older ages, people were very touched and affected by physical miracles that they see, physical changes. But now people are more amenable to be convinced if you bring them scientific evidence. So this matches and suits the people to which the Prophet ﷺ was sent to until the day of judgment. Now finally, scholars have talked about what is miraculous about the Quran, and you can say that everything about the Quran is miraculous, but they mentioned a few things. I will just mention what is mentioned in this book here to you. One of them is حسن تأليفه والتئام كلمه مع الإيجاز والبلاغة. That means the style, the composition of the Quran, the way it is composed and written. It is in the best Arabic and the highest level of eloquence, best Arabic style and highest level of eloquence, with at the same time being so concise, delivering the richest meanings in the least number of words. This is it's called al-balagha or ijaz. Another thing is that surah siyaqih wa uslubi al-mukhalif li kalam. The style of the Quran actually is different from the styles known to the Arabs till the coming of the Quran. They only knew about poetry and prose. But the Quran, you'll find that it has a mixture of both in the same verse. So you cannot call it poetry, you cannot call it prose, and that's why after the coming of the Quran, the Arabic literary style has been classified into 3 classifications now. One of them is poetry, the other one is prose, and the third one is the Quran. Totally separate and distinct entity. So it's a new invention, ibda', something that was never seen like this before, and nobody thought of talking in such a style. So it's not the produce of the environment in which it appeared. Another thing, الإخبار بما سيأتي من الكوائن التي وقع بعضها في العصر النبوي. يعني basically the Quran mentions so many things that will happen in the future, and none of the things mentioned in the Quran that are to come in the future have been proven to be wrong. Everything the Quran says will happen has happened. There are certain things that haven't taken place yet, but nobody can point out say the Quran said this will happen and it happened differently. Not only the things to come, but also in the past. And the past is also being discovered nowadays more than people knew in the past, through the archaeology discoveries, which have also become so advanced nowadays compared to previous ages. Even like, for instance, the Egyptian civilization was not known at the time of the Prophet. It was already a lost civilization, and it was unearthed maybe in the past 200 years only. So when they find things like this, and they compare it to what's in the Quran, they realize the accuracy, the historical accuracy of describing everything in detail that was not known. And many examples, such as when Allah called the king at the time of Yusuf al-Malik, but at the time of at the time of Musa, he called him Fir'aun. While all the historical books and even the Bible itself calls them the king all along. At the time of the Musa, he calls the ruler the king. At the time of Yusuf, calls the ruler the king as well. No distinction. But the Quran made that clear distinction. Even at the time of Ibrahim, when he went to Egypt as well, Allah called him the king. Only at the time of Musa, Allah called Fir'aun. And that was discovered later on when they discovered the Rosetta Stone in Egypt. They figured out that different dynasties have come and they had different titles for the king. And only the time of Musa, he was called Fir'aun. Time of Yusuf, he was not called Fir'aun, he was called the king. And that's totally different from what's in the Bible. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is not copying from the Bible, because the Bible got it wrong. Because the Bible is not preserved like the Quran. So people, at times, the Old Testament was lost totally, especially during the Babylonian siege when they captured the Jews and took them to Babylon. All this was burnt, and they only recompiled the Old Testament hundreds of years after that. So people were trying to recall things from their memory as much as they can, but they cannot be 100% accurate. But of course, in the original Torah, it must have been correct. It must have been correct then, but not with transmission. You follow? And this is just one example. The examples are innumerable. Also, another thing they say, أن قارئه لا يمل من ترداده وسامعه لا يمجه. The Quran is the only book that you can repeat and listen to repeatedly and never get bored. Bring me any other book in the world and let me listen to it throughout my life several times a month, and definitely you'll start assaulting the person who's reciting it to you because he's boring you. But the Quran, subhanallah, the more you recite it, the more beautiful and more sweet it becomes to your heart. This is something people who recite the Quran can find. And also, the other thing is the preservation. إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. There's not a single book from that era, whether in Arabia or outside of Arabia, that is so meticulously preserved like the Quran. From 1400 years, not a single book on earth preserved in its totality, down to the letter and the dot, like the Quran. Not only that, but down to the sound, down to the dialects it was revealed and recited. Only the Quran. And this preservation is a miraculous sign, because it is promised in the Quran. And why only the Quran? Why only this applies to the Quran, no other book in history? So this alone stands out as a huge miracle of the Quran. And then there's so much to say about this. Also, the law is the Quran. It governs a book that's 600 pages. You will find answers to every situation that you may encounter in your life, not only as an individual but as a society, during peace and during war and so on. You can find lessons that apply to everything that you meet in your life. And that's also a miracle, because only Allah knows what people will experience at the level of humanity. That's why Allah says, وَلَقَدْ ضَرَبْنَا فِي هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ لِلنَّاسِ مِنْ كُلِّ مَثَلٍ. I have given an example of everything they need, and they will come across. You will find answers and an example in the Quran that you can, extrapolate and apply it to your situation. Now, also the scientific miracles, the sciences that are in the Quran that are only being discovered nowadays, in every aspect, in astronomy, in biology, and so on. The secrets of the animal kingdoms that you see in the Quran, and the geography, the lowest place on earth, the water when it mixes the salt with the salty water with the sweet water, palatable water, that they don't mix, and all this is mentioned in the Quran. The darkness in the bottom of the sea that nobody knew about, because you have to go down to more than a kilometer, which no human being can dive at that time, and only this darkness is only mentioned in the Quran. So many things, the clouds, how they are formed and how the rain comes down, it's mind-blowing. So the scientific miracles in the Quran are innumerable as well. The numerical miracles I mentioned to you, and this is, you can talk about this for ages and you will never finish. The miraculous symmetry and the numbers, like you can count. Today I was listening to a video, quite amazing, talking about some kind of symmetry between Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Al-Ma'un. I don't know how people, subhanAllah, research these kind of things. Just a person looked into the two surahs and said, the only surah in the Quran that has 7 verses is Al-Fatiha, and the only other surah is Surah Al-Ma'un. So that the idea came to him, let me compare between the two. That's how he thought about it. And he started counting so many things. He says, even the title of Al-Fatiha is 7 letters, and the title of Al-Ma'un is 7 letters. So he said, let me dig deeper. So he kept on looking, and he started counting even down to the dots, although the dots were not in the original Arabic writing. They were invented later to allow for people to know how to recite the Quran, right? To make a distinction between the ba and the ta and the tha and the sheen and sin, right? And dha and dad. So he counted the dots, even down to the dots. He found that Al-Fatiha has 56 dots and Al-Ma'un has 56 dots. Subhanallah, yeah, it's mind-blowing. I actually took pictures of that video. Maybe I'll share it with you one time. But if I go to my pictures, I'll shut off the video. So anyhow, he talked about it in more detail. I don't want to go too much, but finally, this book also says something else that I haven't read before. He says the Quran is the ruh, it's the spirit. It gives life, just like the ruh and the spirit and the soul gives life to the body, to the lifeless body. The Quran, to the people who recite it and believe in it, it's like it gives them the energy and the drive to be better people. It makes them spiritual people. It allows them to control their desires. It allows them to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It allows them to see things differently from other people, to behave differently from other people. كمثل الحي والميت مثل الذي يذكر الله والذي لا يذكر الله. The ones who remember Allah compared to the ones who do not remember Allah are like the live and the dead. The live and the dead. The Quran brings people to life. They know the purpose, they know where they're going, they see things. Because what is life? Except that you have perception and you take certain action based on this, correct action based on your perception. You see a hole in the street, then you avoid the hole. You see a wall, that you turn, so many things. So this is in real life. the same thing. You get the basira, you get the insight, you get the vision that shows you right from wrong, evil from good. And it allows you to choose. It actually gives you the energy and the power to do the right thing. Because there's so many things that can show you the way, but to actually inspire you to do and give you the energy to do things that are that are sometimes impossible for other people to do, that is the Quran. Will stop here, inshallah.